Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. We want to thank you for getting out here in this terrible rainy weather.
That's what that is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's called rain from God. So this morning we're really looking forward to what Brother Doug Pennington has to share with us. Before we get started, however, I think Captain Neinhardt has a couple of things he wants to yell at us about.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bob.
Yeah.
Don't think.
Just because he's a major, I got to put up with that flag.
There you do.
Okay.
Selling this morning.
Coaches outreach is what I'm selling this morning. I just wanted to mention to you men, if you like sports and you want to meet with some coaches once a week for about 24 weeks out of 52 during the year, this is a wonderful ministry. They put biblical truth into coaches and their wives. During the year, they have Bible studies that you would facilitate. Over the summer, the coaches have subsidized resorts they go to with their wives, and they can, enjoy 3 or 4 days for like $150, 4-star accommodations, and there's all kinds of meetings, Bible study. In our church, Dee Shepherd's been involved for years, Kelly Brown, Keith Williams, Don Walker, myself. So we've been pretty heavily participants in the coaches outreach. So we have 3 junior highs that are open. I work at Cross Timbers, and we've got Bedford Junior High, Euless Junior High, and then one of the North Richland Hills, Birdville ISD Junior Highs. Has an opportunity to meet with coaches. I can tell you, I started in Cedar Park outside of Austin. Coaches change their lives. I've been with young coaches, old coaches, male coaches, female coaches, neophytes, spiritually mature. It really makes a difference in how they live their lives and the example they set for the kids. Every coach will influence 25,000 young people in a career. And today, when you've got all these broken families and disadvantaged people, a lot of these young tough guys, the only guy in the world they believe in and will listen to is their football coach. And if he's a godly man, what a difference. They can be more influential as coaches than youth ministers sometimes. So, important ministry. If you have any interest, let me know. I'll connect you with Robert Arian, and we'll let him talk to you more about it, and then you can make a decision. Thank you, Major.
You're released, Captain. Of course, Tom forgot to tell you is that every place he went, they had losing seasons. But that doesn't matter. Spiritually, they were. Well, I want to introduce our very special speaker, Doug Pennington. Doug was born and now lives in Keller. He's married, has a daughter 10 years old. And he was born and raised a Mormon. And what he's going to do is share with us how his story, his walk to Christianity. And I want to mention that in September, for 4 weeks, he's going to actually be teaching a course, likely somewhere in a partitioned part of this room, on Mormonism. He'll tell you a little bit more about this. So let's give a First Baptist Colleyville applause, greeting to Doug Pennington.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, I'm a fairly relaxed guy, so I'm just going to kind of saddle up and we'll just kind of talk. As you said, I was born and raised here in Keller, Texas. I'm actually a little connection. I'm actually Whit Boyd's cousin. That's how I am familiar with First Baptist Colleyville. I am going to be teaching a class coming up on Mormonism. Having a unique perspective, being born and raised in the Mormon Church, and now being a Christian, I've kind of have a viewpoint of both sides of the story of the issue, and I've seen over the past 10 or 15 years probably a real blurring of the lines between Mormonism and Christianity. It used to be that the Mormons were very adamant and proud of the fact that they were not Christians, that they were very different and set apart from other Christian denominations. But there seems to be a concerted effort now to become more mainstream. And with that comes a challenge for us Christians in that we have to, earnestly contend for the faith. Their doctrines, their ideas, their beliefs are very much in contrary to Christian beliefs. And even the core things, the Trinity, how are you saved? Those, the close-handed things that we, need to all be united on, they are not, and they don't have the same beliefs. And so what I'm going to do in September is come here and teach a class that will explore the differences. We're going to use the Bible a lot, really get into that. We'll show what the Mormon Church believes, and then what the Bible says about those beliefs, so that we can really see that difference. Redraw that line, and then also talk a little bit about how we can reach out to our LDS friends and family. Anyone in here have a coworker, a family member, a neighbor that's Mormon? I see one hand back there. Okay, that's a good number of guys. Okay, it's good. Well, it'll be a good class for you. I've already taught it before at Gateway Church over in South Lake. That's actually where I attend church. It was from the feedback I've gotten has been very helpful, and it's been very applicable just in the immediate conversations people have had. And so if you come out, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. What I want to do today is talk to you briefly about the pressures that are on the Mormon people in general in regards to just their everyday life. I'm going to get into a little bit into Leviticus 27 if you have your Bibles, and also get into 1 Peter. We're going to talk a little bit about redemption. Leviticus can be kind of a heavy book, but there's some good stuff in there. So at the core of Mormon belief and Mormon doctrine is this idea that you must work out your own that you must work for your own salvation. It is dependent upon your works and not upon the grace of Jesus. And so they take verses like at the very end of the 5th chapter of Matthew, where it talks about be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. They take that very literally. Now, I believe that's an actual command that Jesus gave us. But I think the mode of completion of that is different than what they see. And so that's what I'm going to get into when we get into Leviticus. But because they're a works-based religion, right, one of the core verses in the Book of Mormon that they hold on to is a verse that says, "You are saved by grace after all that you can do." Right? And another verse says that it is only after you put off all ungodliness that Christ's grace is implemented in your life. Right? So there's very much a works mentality to it. They also look at James, where it says faith without works is dead. And they'll say, well, that means that in order to be saved, I have to add works to my faith to reach salvation. Whereas the Christian viewpoint is faith equals salvation, then works, right? Where they say faith plus works equals salvation. And the entire Mormon mentality is wrapped around that. It's full of benchmarks. That's what I like to call them. And they're external benchmarks that everyone can see. Whenever you turn 8, you get baptized. For them, baptism is entrance, membership into their church. It's also very much a necessity for exaltation, which is their highest level of heaven. We'll get more into that in the class that I teach. But exaltation is that point in which you can yourself become a god if you follow all the other benchmarks and have your own planets and that sort of thing. That is a very real teaching of the LDS Church. It's something that they have tried to distance themselves from a little bit in the public, but in private they still continue to teach it. And so you have benchmarks like baptism at 8. For men like us, whenever you get to be 12 years old, you have to have the priesthood, and there's other things. When you turn 19, you have to go on a mission. I went to Barcelona, Spain on my mission. It was a great 2 years, but at the same time, it was, hello? Okay. It was a good reminder of the pressures that are on the LDS people. Because these benchmarks are external, if you don't complete one of them, everyone knows it. So here's the problem. If you don't fit in that mold, or if you slip up somewhere, you're continually judged by those around you. Because everything is external. Everyone sees your faults. But the standard is be perfect. Right? And so what that causes you to do, and what I did, is it caused me to create different faces depending on who I was around. I was kind of a different kid. I didn't really fit into the Mormon mold all growing up. And so I had to develop very quickly a church face that appeared perfect, really good, had it all together. And then I had my school face. I went to Northwest High School, and there was only like 2 or 3 other Mormon kids in my school, so I was able to kind of loosen up and be me at school. But that caused a problem because eventually I kind of forgot which one was the real me. It was a problem. I'm still figuring it out. But because I didn't fit in that mold, but I had to feel like I did, or I had to appear that I did, it caused a lot of problems internally. Well, I appeared that I had it all together. And many of you who know Mormons probably look at them and say, wow, they seem like they're doing pretty well. They got a good family. They're very nice people. They look like they have it all figured out. Most likely inside they're a mess. Jesus referred to them as whitewashed tombs. Right? That's kind of how I was, and how many of them are. I'm definitely not alone in that feeling. Well, on the outside, I appeared like I had it all together in my church face. In my room, when I'm all by myself, I was a mess. I could feel and I could sense my sin. I was sin conscious. But one, I couldn't let anyone else know, because then how would they judge me? How would they see me? It's a very self-policed atmosphere. The Mormon community polices itself. So I couldn't let anyone else know how I felt. But at the same time, I also looked at them, and the perception was they had it all together. I hadn't talked. There's almost an unwritten rule that you don't talk about those kind of things, so you don't know that other people around you are having those same issues you're having. Right? And so I went through high school like that. I did not want to go on my Mormon mission, but everyone else around me had left that was my age. And so I started getting those questions because people were observing that I hadn't completed that benchmark. Adults around me said, well, when are you going to go on a mission? How come you haven't gone on your mission? Hey, where are you going? Oh, I don't know. I haven't signed up to go yet. Well, why not? Right? And so they start putting this social pressure on you to go. And so I went. I didn't really want to, but I decided it was kind of the thing to do, socially speaking. The stigma attached to someone who doesn't go is pretty harsh, to the point where they even teach the young women as they're going through high school, and sometimes even earlier, not to marry someone unless they went on a mission. Right? So if you don't go, there's a greater chance that, socially speaking, you will have problems. And so I went, and it was a good 2 years in the fact that I was able to learn Spanish and really was able to see a different part of the world that I hadn't experienced. But within a few months, I was miserable because I was there out of obligation. I was there for the wrong motive. I didn't have the heart or the desire to be there. In fact, I was teaching people about a gospel that in reality was tearing me up inside. Right? I was trying to teach good news that I knew wasn't good news because it was wrecking me. And I was preaching a gospel that had no hope in it, and I felt no hope. And so I fought through it, but when I came back, I had every intention of just walking away from the church. But then I met my wife. That kind of kept me in it again, because you get married and you now have someone else to be responsible with and for. And she became a member when she was 18. She converted to Mormonism. She was Presbyterian before that. But come to find, she was unhappy and I was unhappy, but because there was that unwritten rule, neither one of us, even husband and wife, didn't talk about it for years, that we were unhappy. But I had another problem in that I had my church face and my school face when I was younger. But whenever I would come home, I had to keep my church face on. I didn't have anywhere else to express myself. And so that just continued to eat inside of me. I could feel my sin. I could just sense it. And no matter how much good works, no matter how many people I help move, no matter, that's a big thing in Mormonism, by the way, helping people move. So if you're moving, don't call me, because I'll feel compelled to do it. I still do. Some people moved in down the street just a couple of days ago, and it was like 110, and they looked so miserable, and I was like, okay, I gotta go help. So I went out there and helped. It's just a compulsion. Old habits die hard. But no matter how many things I did, no matter how many benchmarks I completed, no matter how many things I did that they said you need to do, I never felt any closer to God. And so I began to think about that, and it became conscious to me that just doing these things out of obligation wasn't going to do anything. And I actually got to the point where I questioned, because I could not get the relationship I wanted with God if He even existed. This was around December of 2007. And so I told my wife that in the middle of the Christmas program, sitting in the Mormon church. Hey, I don't know if I believe in God. And that floored her. She did not understand how someone who grew up in the one true church couldn't or didn't believe or see God. She was Presbyterian before, and she's like, I know God's there. I believe in God. And so while she was Mormon, a lot of her beliefs were still very much Christian. She believed that she still always worshiped the same God, which Mormons do worship a different God. So come to the class and you'll see why I say that. But that was the beginning of my exodus from Mormonism. I walked away at that point, very disenchanted with all religion and with anyone telling me who God was and what He expected from me. She followed suit shortly after, and some friends of ours began to speak into our lives. Some good Christian friends. We have some friends that are part of First Baptist Keller, who live just a few houses down from us, and they began to really work on us, and really show us information not only about Mormonism but about who God really was. And so we began to go to some different churches. I went with my wife just because she wanted me to, but at the same time I was studying Hinduism and Buddhism and all these other religious philosophies, trying to find out. I knew there was something out there, but I couldn't figure out where it was. And my trust in Christianity wasn't really there, because I grew up my whole life believing that Mormonism was right and Christianity was wrong. Right? It was either the Mormon church or it was nothing. That's how I grew up. But she began to go to a non-denominational church, and I began to go with her. The first Sunday that I went, the preacher got up, and he began to teach. And he stopped at one point and said, I don't want you to believe what I'm saying today because I'm saying it. I'm a man. I'm going to fail you. And so if you have a question, if you hear something that does not sound right, please look it up, research it, and then come talk to me about it if you find something that I said that maybe wasn't in line with what the Bible said. That was really refreshing to me, because in the Mormon church, it's when the prophet speaks, all thinking's over. The thinking's been done. Right? You would never dream of hearing a prophet or an apostle or anyone else in the Mormon, any other leader in the Mormon church saying, I might be wrong. It just doesn't exist, right? And so I was like, wow, that's really refreshing. My faith and my trust in men to tell me the truth had been crushed. And then here's a preacher who I always was taught not to really trust him, saying, don't trust me, trust the Bible, trust what God says, and if you find something that I say that doesn't match up with it, let's talk about it. And I'll make retractions if I need to and corrections. That was fantastic. And so I took him up on it. For about a year, I sat in church and I made notes, but not notes of what he was speaking about, but questions of what I had. Well, I've never read that before. I've never heard that before. That sounds a little funny. And so I'd write it down. And I would basically go home and reteach myself the sermons just to double check every little thing that I could think of to see if he was telling the truth. More often than not, he was, which is great. We moved from there, and I still wasn't a Christian. Moved from there to Gateway Church because I found a pastor who knew enough about Mormonism, who was able to walk me through passages of the Bible. He was able to say, okay, this is what Mormonism teaches right here, and it's close but not quite. So let's just churn it right here using the Word, and this is the right. This is the right way to look at things. And so I began to sit with him and talk with him and learn from him and really examine the Word. Passages like Hebrews 1 and 2, where it talks about how in the past God used prophets to speak to us and teach us, but now in these latter days he uses Jesus to teach us. Passages like that I never heard as a Mormon begin to just jump out. That basically say that Mormon prophet, he's obsolete because we have Jesus, and you can go directly to the source. Later on in Hebrews talks about how he is the high priest forever. Well, I'd never even questioned the idea that Mormons have high priests. They have thousands of them. And so I began to look at temple worship in the Bible and compare it with temple worship in Mormonism. I began to compare the priesthood, works, salvation, through grace, those kind of things. And it just, the Word just opened up to me. And then in January of 2009, during a service, it was like God just finally grabbed me and kind of shook me and said, I'm right here. If you'll just trust me, give your life to me, I will take care of you. I will teach you. And I want to love you. I want to take care of you. And so I did. And it's been one of the most amazing things. It's been 2.5 years, I guess, now since it's been 3 years since I left Mormonism, 2.5 years since I've been saved. And it's been an amazing trip. It was almost as if he had me kind of back in a slingshot. He kind of has you pull back, really tense, really ready to go. And once I made that commitment, once I said, you know what, you can have me and do whatever you want to with me, because I'm not doing anything good myself. It's like he just let it go, and I just went flying. And I'm in a spot I never dreamed I would be. I'm teaching at men's breakfasts and other church things, and this seems amazing to me. But it's definitely only by His grace that I'm even able to be here. Now, here's what I want to get to tonight before I get off track, because I have a tendency to do that. Leviticus 27, I talked a bit about how Mormons look at that, be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, at the end of Matthew 5, as a literal command that they must complete themselves. What they don't realize is that while they use the term, Jesus is my Redeemer, I don't think they grasp the concept. I know I didn't grasp the concept until I read through Leviticus, and I found that Leviticus 27 talks all about redemption, about that biblical law. And it's been huge in my mind, and I think if we can help Mormons grasp this concept, it could do wonders for them. Because they really are hurt. They really are weighed down with a sense of their own guilt, their own shame, their own sin, but those around them continue to pile it on. Because the benchmark is perfection, and they really believe that they can reach it themselves. Every time they slip up, it's just another reminder of their inability to live up to expectation. It's another reminder that they're not getting it done. But instead of making that drive them to their knees and to the cross, it actually drives them to work harder. But at the same time, is putting more and more weight on their shoulders: guilt, shame, resentment, judgment for other people around them, try to make themselves feel a little bit better about themselves. And so they continue to crawl along, hoping they're getting farther, but in reality they're not. So if we can help them understand that it's what I'm about to show you here in Leviticus and in 1 Peter, I think it could be very impactful to them. So Leviticus 27 talks about redemption, and it lays out the requirements for it. I won't read through all of that, but basically what it says is, in order for something to be redeemed, according to the law, you have to pay the full value of that item, house, land, animal, whatever it might be, plus 1/5, or 20%. Okay? And then you can redeem it. Well, if we put that into context of Christ being our Redeemer, what does that mean to us? Right? We say it, but what does that mean? I always thought that meant, Jesus had a handful of tickets from Chuck E. Cheese, walked up to the counter, and I wanted those little toys inside the counter, and he says, I want to redeem these tickets for that in exchange. And it is that, but it has a deeper meaning than just, hey, he bought me. If we think about what it means to redeem, the full value plus 20%, I think we can really grasp the depth and the width of what Christ did for us. Think about it this way. On the cross, Christ made, he paid the full price for just about everything. I mean, for everything. Our sickness, our sin, our sorrows, all those things were hung on the cross with him. And so if you need healing today, and let's say your healing is worth 5 lashes, right? By his stripes you're healed. If it's worth 5 stripes, he took 6 for you, right? Full price plus 1/5. If your shame is worth, make sure I get my math right here. Gotta do math in my head real quick. If your shame's worth 10 seconds hanging on the cross, then he hung there for 12. Is that right, my math? All right. If your sin is worth, say, 100 drops of blood, he spilled 120 drops of blood for your sins. He didn't just pay the price, he redeemed you. He paid the price plus 1/5, plus 20% more, to make sure that full payment was made, that you were redeemed, and that there's absolutely no doubt that what he did can cover everything that it needs to. They missed that. I missed that. And I think a lot of Christians miss that. Now that in itself blew me away whenever God showed that to me. I was amazed. It hit me so deep. I began to think about all the areas in my life where I felt like, man, I was just too bad. I was in this sin for so long. How is it possible that he could pay for that? Well, he redeemed it. So there's no way that I can out-sin, right? The word says, I guess in Romans, where sin abounds, grace abounds. That's a picture of that right here. So here's the point. In Leviticus 27, I think we are in verse 9. It says, what if what he vowed was an animal that is acceptable as an offering to the Lord, such an animal given to the Lord becomes holy. Then it says, if there's one that has a spot or a blemish, and it should be substituted for one that has no spot, no blemish, and is perfect, both become holy. Okay? We ourselves offer our lives as living sacrifices. but we're blemished. We're stained with sin. We're stained with all kinds of other issues. But Jesus is the spotless lamb. He is the perfect one. And so the word says here in Leviticus, if the spotless lamb, the perfect lamb, is substituted for the spotted lamb, then both become holy. It goes on to say that it's the priest who sets the price for that spotted, blemished lamb. So in those moments whenever we feel like we're too spotted and we're not worth anything, the good news there is that we don't set the price. We don't set our own price, our own worth. He does. He's our high priest forever. So Christ sets our price, and then what does he do? He pays that price plus 20% to redeem it. Right? Does that make sense? You guys seeing that? So our worth, well, we see that in the world we see spots and blemishes as a defect, as something that devalues us. But we don't have the right under the law to even set that price for ourselves, to set our own value. He does. He clothes us in his righteousness, right? He gives us the signet ring and his robes, and he kisses us and he loves us, and he says, "You are worth my life." Okay. Now, if we flip over to 1 Peter, we're going to see the New Testament application here that I think, this is what I think Mormons need to see, and all of us as Christians as well. We all need to, I think, have a greater understanding of this. Okay, he's going to reference that passage in Leviticus 27 about how the spotless lamb becomes holy when it's substituted for a spotless lamb. The spotted becomes perfect when he's substituted for the spotless. Yeah, my spot's right. All right, we're going to start on verse 18. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. That's amazing. You were not redeemed with silver or gold, not with those Chuck E. Cheese tickets. Right? As silly as that may sound, it makes sense in my head. But with the precious blood of Christ. Right? Like I said before, with the stripes, with the blood on the cross, with him hanging on the cross. All those things were redeemed. Paid the full price plus 20% for your sake. We jump back up to verse 16. It says, "For it is written, be holy, because I am holy." That's substitution. That's redemption. The spotted becoming holy as the spotless because of the fulfillment of the law. Right? Christ fulfilled the law so perfectly that even in this, we can see its application. So what I strive to do, and what I do, is try to teach other Christians how to use the Bible, to use our swords, to speak into the lives of Mormons around them, because they're a lost people. They don't understand substitution. They look at that "be ye perfect," and they just go for it, and they go for it, and they continue to fall, and they continue to fall. But for some reason, with that backpack laden full of rocks of shame and guilt and sin, they continue to try to climb that hill and just keep sliding down it. But if they would just take off that backpack, you know, I use the analogy of a fire escape. If anybody has seen like a New York City alleyway with all the fire escapes, you know, they kind of zigzag all the way down. But there's a slight problem, is that the ladder doesn't reach all the way to the ground, does it? Right? It maybe has a drop-down ladder of some sort. Well, the Mormon view is that Jesus is standing there with his hands cupped, right? Ready to give you a boost. And so he'll give you the boost to that bottom rung of that ladder, but at that point, it's your responsibility to climb the rest of your way up. And each flight of stairs is another requirement, another benchmark, another work you have to do, another thing you have to do. Right? That's the Mormon mentality. Christ gives you a little help, but then it's up to you. Right? But the Christian mentality is Christ just reaches down his arm. And he says, if you just grab it, and he's got a long arm, right? If you just grab it, I'll pull you up. If you just grab a hold of my arm and hold on to it, and trust that I have the ability to bring you up here, I will. And he brings us up to the top of the building, right, to heaven. And it's all because of him and not because of anything that we've done. We have no right to claim any responsibility for that. And so, I have such a burden having been Mormon for those people, and it really makes me cringe a lot of times whenever I see them struggling and unwilling to even see this. I've shown this to different people. I've talked to them over and over again about Ephesians 2:8-9. You've been saved by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. Right? I've gone through so many conversations, but there's such a veil, such a blindness, a cloud, probably is a better description, over them. Because they worship a God who is not the God of the Bible. It's my belief, and I'll just be blunt, that they're demonically oppressed. They worship, in the class I go through, Exodus 32, the story of the golden calf. They worship a false god. And I'll explain to you why that's is significant, why that's true in the class if you'll come. I don't have time to do it today. So what we have to do as believers is we have to, above all, pray. Above all, we have to pray. My cousins, I ran into one of my cousins over at Gateway where I go to church. I didn't know she went there. But she was so surprised to see me. And this was shortly after I started going there a couple years ago. And she when I told her that I wasn't a Mormon anymore and that I was Christian, she began to cry. And she said, we've been praying for you for like 20 years. And it is a miracle to see you here. And that's what it's about. That's what it takes. We don't fight against flesh and blood. It's not the Mormon you're fighting. It's not the non-Christian you're fighting. You're fighting the principality of the darkness, the demonic that's over them, that's covering their eyes. So we have to pray that cloud lifts, even for a moment, so that we can speak truth into their hearts and into their lives. And so that once that light gets in, even if that cloud drops down back on top of them, once that light gets in, it's going to do its work. It's going to begin to work things out, and to fester, if you will. If light can fester, I don't know. But it'll begin to contend with that darkness. And at some point, that seed that we planted, that light that we put in there, is going to manifest some good fruit. And it'll bring them to a more of a conscious state of their sin, but a realization that there's so much that there's no way they can ever outdo it. And it'll bring them to their knees, it'll bring them to the cross like it did me. So that's what I have. Today, anyways, for the sake of time, I could talk for hours, and it's a big topic and a big, so we'll stop there. But I really hope you'll come to my class. We're going to get into some, I'm going to go more in depth on my story. We're also going to get into some deep theology, kind of a theology 101 class, I guess, and really examine Mormon belief versus Christian belief. And then I'm really going to give you some practical tools that'll help you in your conversations with LDS people around you. So I think it's going to be good. It's going to be I'm really excited for it. With that, are there any, I think we might have a few minutes for questions. Are there any questions?
Could you
Okay.
describe for us, trials, and now that you're a believer, can you describe how trials, and your kind of your perception and kind of the mindset associated with trials coming into your life as a Mormon and now as
Yeah,
a follower?
Mormons pretty much.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, how do you view trials now in your life? How do you see them as a Mormon, and how do you see them now as a Christian? Mormons generally see trials, all trials, given by God as a test. The whole purpose for us being here is to be tested. So they see all trials as given by God. I don't see it that way anymore. I have a pretty firm belief that the enemy is here to kill, steal, and destroy, as the word says, and so he doesn't like what we're doing. And since I've left Mormonism, and even more so since I began this ministry of teaching and educating Christians about Mormonism, I've probably seen more spiritual attack than I ever have. It's been pretty interesting. So if you ever get an inclination to pray for me, please do, because there's probably something going on. But I see it. I believe that God turns all things for our good. But I don't think all bad things are from Him. I just see it as. It doesn't mean everything's a demonic attack. Don't go that. I don't go that far. But I definitely believe that God is for me, and I didn't always believe that as a Mormon. Yes, sir.
What does a Mormon church believe about monogamy, polygamy, or the different sects, or what's with one wife, 10 wives? Where's that going?
Yeah, they have strong family values. They do believe in. They will say they believe in one man, one wife. Historically speaking, polygamy was a big part of the LDS Church. Right? I think that's one of the more common things that people think about when they think about Mormonism. That the practice of polygamy stopped in 1904, but there are still many, break-off groups and sects that practice polygamy. Warren Jeffs has been in the news a lot because he just had the trial here in Texas, where I think he got life in prison. He's obviously one of the more out front polygamous parts of the Mormon Church. In my opinion, those groups actually follow Mormonism more closely now than the mainstream LDS Church. That's a lot of in-depth doctrinal look to get to that point, but I think they follow the teachings of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and those early LDS prophets much more than they do now. Interesting to note, so they don't practice polygamy anymore here. Those Mormons who are found to be in a polygamous relationship are excommunicated. But interestingly enough, they've never disavowed the belief. Right? They've never technically distanced themselves from it. They just stopped the practice of it. It's still in their canon of Scripture. And it's my belief that if it becomes a legal practice, there's a big push right now for same-sex marriages. I think the next step, if that becomes mainstream, would be a polygamous relationship. And it's my thought that they would then reinstate it because it's still part of their canon. In addition to that, in the Mormon temples, a man can be sealed to or married forever to more than one woman. And so there's a celestial polygamy that's still in effect in the temple. And that's a fairly detailed and long thing to really explain fully. But they believe that they can be married for not only time, right, not till death do you part, but forever. And so if a man and a woman are married and the woman dies and they're married forever, right, he can remarry another woman and be sealed and married to her forever as well. So whenever he gets to eternity, he's got two wives, right? So there's a celestial polygamy that's still technically practiced today. So let's go with the green shirt and then we'll come back here.
There's been obviously it looks like a lot of growth in the Mormon church, and hearing some of these things kind of seem a little far out, for a Judeo-Christian point of view. But what is really the attraction? I mean, they work hard, I admit that, but what are they selling to people that weren't born Mormon families to get them to convert?
Okay, the question was just to talk about Mormon growth and why they're seeing growth. I would say the main thing that they really push nowadays is this idea of families and strong morals. This idea that your family can be together forever. I think that's kind of a funny thing because now that I'm outside of it and I look at it, I think it's kind of an interesting belief because I believe that I'll see my wife again in heaven, so it's not like I won't be with her. But they take it to another level, saying that you'll still be married in heaven. That really only has application if you become God and they can have your own created beings. But that's a long, complicated story. Probably shouldn't have even gone there. Sorry. My mind goes too fast. In regarding the growth of the church, well, let me say this. My wife was what I call a cultural Mormon. She was brought in when she was 18, or started, I guess, when she was 16, because of social activities. Their youth program and then their young adult program is really strong. And so she was going to North Texas. They have a pretty big program up there. And so she was brought in for social aspects, for dances, for cute missionaries, right, those kind of things. And so that's why she's kind of my guinea pig. If I can teach her about a Mormon doctrine and she understands it, then I know I'm doing pretty good because I know I'm teaching it simply enough. She was very shielded from the Mormon doctrine, which is kind of fun to see, and I'm kind of glad she was. So she was in it really just for the cultural and for that kind of social aspect. Now, regarding church growth, it's really kind of a misnomer that they're growing. A lot of it's either population shift. A lot of people are moving from California and from Utah and from Arizona, which are three of the biggest populated Mormon areas, to here and to other places. They claim about 300,000 baptisms a year, which means new church members, right? You get baptized, that's how you become a member of the church. That includes the kids. Mormons have lots of kids, like Catholics. So I'll say that first. But in addition to that, while the church won't release official numbers, there are some people who still work for the church in their main office building in Salt Lake who are disenchanted Mormons and would like to be out, but it's their job, so they have to stay in the church. And they kind of feed information to other people who are out. And they estimate that there are about 100,000 people every single year that remove their names from the church and that sort of thing. And so that leaves about only 200,000 new members each year. And their activity rate is only about a fourth to a third of total membership. And so, in any given congregation, they'll have about 600 people on their rolls, including kids, but only about 200 will actually show up on every Sunday. And in South American countries and foreign countries where the growth of the church is the most, and that's actually where the bulk of the membership is, their retention rate's only about 10 to 15%. And so these numbers that they throw out as growth, and they perpetuate as growth, they're kind of funny numbers. If you really look at the demographic, you really look at how it's divided up. I think it's a perception issue. They're great at PR, so it's a perception issue that they are growing. I think there used to be a lot of growth, but I think with the internet, then just the availability of information, I think it's really plateaued. And I think, I hope and I pray that we'll begin to see it dip down as well. Hold on, there was a guy over here in the striped shirt that had a question.
I got two questions. One, is it the Watchtower?
That's Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. All right. But if you don't get to the plateau that you're talking about to go to heaven, what happens to you? What do they say happens to you?
Excuse me. They have 3 levels of heaven. They're very close to being universalists. Not quite, but very close. There's 3 levels of heaven. And so if you are a non-believer, you go to the lower level. the thieves and the robbers and all the people who are don't believe in God at all will go to the lower level of heaven. The middle level of heaven is for people like us who are, well, not me, but you guys. I have a different level, and I'll say that in a second. But like Mother Teresa people, right? People that are like really, believe in God, but weren't Mormon, go to the middle level, and then the highest heaven, called the celestial kingdom, is where all the Mormons go. And then if you complete all of the requirements, you go to the highest level of the celestial kingdom, which is whenever you become a god and can make your own planets and
They don't believe
populate
in
them. They do not believe in fire and brimstone hail. That is correct. People like me, apostates from the Mormon Church, and some other really and Satan and his minions go to what they call outer darkness. But very few people get to that level. I'm one of the lucky few, I guess. So it's kind of backwards. Jesus says in the Bible, narrow is the way to heaven, and there are few who find it. And wide is the path to destruction, and many find it. They flip-flop them, right? They switch them. They say narrow is the way, and few who find it, to outer darkness, or their version of hell. But many find their way to heaven. They twist it, they flop it. Okay. Jim, was there another question over here?
I would say, when the doorbell rings and there's two, nicely dressed young men, and they've got their tags, and they're Latter-day Saints, and they begin to engage in you. What's the one question they hope you don't ask?
What's the one question they hope you don't ask? Okay, he said when two Mormon missionaries come to your door and they want to share a message with you, what's the one question they hope you don't ask them? I would say that's probably a question that would expose their own sin. They don't like to talk about sin, so if you could talk about what people who are in Christian to Mormon outreach refer to it as the impossible gospel. If you talk to them about the fact that the wages of sin are death, all fall short of the glory of God, right? Those kind of things, and say, then mention the fact that Mormonism, the Book of Mormon talks about how you only receive grace after you put off all ungodliness, or after all you can do. You just ask them, how are you doing with that? Your level is perfection, and it's by your own efforts that you get there. So how are you doing with that, right? Help them see their own sin, and help them see that really what they're trying to do is impossible. And then you walk them through Ephesians 2, 8 through 10, or you walk them through other passages in Romans that talk about how if it's by works, then it's not by grace, it's by those kind of things.
And if you come to your class, we're going to learn about that.
Exactly. If you come to my class, you will get more in-depth information on that. That's one thing that I do talk about.
And you'll be able to handle the guys with the magazines, too.
Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, I don't know. There's some similarities, but right? Yes, sir.
Where do they get the scripture that they use that sets the basis for their theology?
Where do they get their canon of scripture? Right. If I understand the question correctly. Well, they use the Bible, King James Version only. They're KJV only people. Interestingly enough, they have the Bible in their canon, but they have a phrase that they say that they believe the Bible to be the Word of God only as far as it is translated correctly. It's their belief that the Bible has been perverted, that doctrines have been taken out, and perverse ones have been put in, and so it can't be fully trusted. They have a very misunderstood idea on how the Bible came about, and its reliability and our ability to look back at ancient documents and texts to verify what's in it. And so they don't trust it fully. And so, but at the same time, they won't tell you which passages weren't translated correctly. And so it's kind of this nebulous clause that they can grab a hold of and get them out of a sticky situation. So if you show them something that that completely, blows apart a belief of theirs. They can just claim, well, that's not translated correctly. And so that's an issue. We have to, whenever we're talking with a Mormon, you have to establish the Bible as the common ground, which sometimes is easier than others. But that's what we have to use as the measuring stick. In addition to that, they have the Book of Mormon, which was a record of the American Indians anciently that Joseph Smith got from an angel of light. All right, I'm sure you guys know that reference. And he gave him some golden plates, and then he allegedly translated them into this record. It's said to claim, or he claims that it has the fullness of the gospel, right? That it contains things that the Bible doesn't, and that is the most perfect book on earth. If you ask them, where's modern temple worship in the Book of Mormon? Where is eternal families in the Book of Mormon? You ask them about these different doctrines that are unique to Mormonism. Ask them where they are in the Book of Mormon, and they won't be able to tell you because it's not there. So that's an interesting thing. But then they have the Doctrine and Covenants, which is a set of revelations given to Joseph Smith in the early years of the church. And then one more, which that's where a lot of those kind of doctrines come from, polygamy, those kind of doctrines come from, Doctrine and Covenants. And then they have another book called The Pearl of Great Price, which contains some of his history and like his account of when he saw God and Jesus was called to be a prophet in 1820. But it also contains alleged writings of Abraham that were taken from some scrolls that he found with some mummies and like a traveling show. That's been proven to be false. It's just a regular common funeral text written in Egyptian. But they have 4 books in their canon. In addition to that, it's their belief that modern prophets, the current prophet, can contradict Scripture. They kind of can speak over Scripture, and they can even contradict what a previous prophet said. The current prophet holds kind of rank over all those things. And so twice a year they get up to speak to the church at large, and during that time they can set out new doctrine, and it's considered Scripture. It's every April and October, I believe. And so the Mormon, the current prophet holds a lot of weight, and what they say can just contradict anything else in the past, and can rewrite and revise whatever they want to. All right, I think probably have time for probably one more. Anybody else have a question? Yep, in the back.
You still have your magic underwear?
Oh, I don't, and I got rid of it all, and every once in a while, I kind of wish I still had it, just to show off, because people are always really curious about it. But no, I don't. I should have held on to a pair, but.
You might want to explain.
What do you
that
do?
to
Oh, I'm
those-
sorry.
those
He asked
that-
if I still have my magic underwear. For those who are listening to a recording, if we're even recording
What is
this.
the magic underwear?
All right. In the temple, whenever you go through the temple, Mormon temple worship is obviously very different than biblical temple worship, and that's a whole other awesome discussion, in my opinion. But when you go through the temple, you kind of go through different rites and rituals. It's very much has a lot of Masonic origins, very close to what the Masons do. Joseph Smith was a Grand Master Mason, and about 6 weeks after he became a Grand Master Mason, he had the revelation of Mormon temple worship, very similar. And so what they do, though, when you go to the temple, is at that point, you're required to wear special underwear for the rest of your life. They look like boxer briefs and a white T-shirt. They're nothing too special. But they have some different symbols in them, like the compass and the square and things like that. And so you're supposed to wear them all the time.
Do you have several changes?
Yeah. Not the same pair. You can have more than one. You can have more than one. But but no, I don't have that anymore. That's an interesting discussion we can have offline sometime maybe. Anyways, thank you very much for having me out. I hope to see some of you in the class on Wednesday. I think you'll find it pretty interesting and educational. I think you'll come out with a much better understanding of the plight of the Mormons and how we can help them really see the light.
When's
Yes,
the class start?
Every Wednesday in September. What's that first date?
September 7th.
September 7th. It's the Wednesday night classes that you guys have here.
It'll be
So,
in this building.
in this building. There you go.
Would you lead us to closing prayer, please?
Absolutely.